A big hello to everyone watching. My name is Alex, and you are on the Classic Cars Roast channel. Let's talk about a car that people either love or absolutely despise, the 1973 Ford Gran Torino. Now, if you're scratching your head wondering why we're even discussing this relic from the Malaise era, let me make it crystal clear. This car is a prime example of how far American muscle fell when it came to power, performance, and sheer driving pleasure. High-compression V8s were a thing of the past. And what did Ford give us? A pathetic compression ratio of 7.6 to 1, coupled with a miserable 190 horsepower from the Windsor V8. Seriously, how is that supposed to get anyone excited? Now, about the market situation. This is where it gets both interesting and absurd. The big iron market is really heating up right now, and you'd be surprised to see how much these once-ignored cars are fetching at auctions. I mean, we're talking about prices soaring to as much as $74,000 for a Gran Torino with a measly 3,900 miles. It's like people have lost their minds. Once considered just another classic in the junkyard, these cars are now being treated like gold. What kind of brutal charm or hooligan streak makes a car that was once thrown away suddenly desirable? It's the unapologetic character of these heavy iron beasts that's bringing collectors back to the table. First impressions? Well, the Gran Torino looks like it's trying really hard to be a muscle car, but just ends up looking confused. That fastback roofline is signature, sure, but it also screams, "I'm a wannabe." The larger bumpers, introduced to comply with federal safety regulations, add a layer of awkwardness. And don't get me started on the interior. It's a classic case of, let's throw in as many options as possible to distract from the fact that this car is a mechanical mess. You can have your standard bench seats or opt for the bucket seats, which are a step in the right direction. But the dashboard layout feels like a bad afterthought. Optional air conditioning? Sure, but good luck with those faulty wiring harnesses that seem to plague these cars. In short, if you're on the lookout for a Gran Torino, tread carefully. The market is flooded with these cars, and their prices reflect a bizarre mix of nostalgia and desperation. If you can find one in good condition, originality is key here, then maybe, just maybe, you should consider buying it. But remember, it's only original once. Buckle up, folks, because we're diving headfirst into the ghastly world of the 1970s, a time when the car industry was flailing like a fish out of water. The Ford Gran Torino was born in this era, a period many enthusiasts refer to as the Malaise era. And let me tell you, it was aptly named. Picture this. The last great year for high-compression V8s was 1970, and after that, manufacturers were scrambling to meet new emission standards while simultaneously trying to keep costs down. Enter the Gran Torino, a car that epitomizes the decline of American muscle. Now, the Gran Torino was part of the third generation of the Torino line, produced from 1972 to 1976. By the time we hit 1973, the once proud and mighty Ford was churning out models that were, quite frankly, a shadow of their former selves. The Gran Torino was available in various trims, including the Gran Torino Sport and the Gran Torino Brougham, but don't let the fancy names fool you. This car was a product of compromise, with engines that were downright laughable. The Windsor V8 offered a pitiful 140 horsepower, while the Cleveland V8, the supposed powerhouse of the lineup, had configurations ranging from 162 to 264 horsepower, depending on the setup. Let's not forget the modified V8, which maxed out at a meager 170 horsepower. Compare that to the roaring beasts of the 60s, and you'll see we've hit rock bottom. And what about the transmission? Sure, you could get the 3-speed automatic, but we all know the Turbo Hydromatic 400 is the best automatic transmission ever built. So, for me, the fact that Ford was still using the inferior C6 is a slap in the face. The handling? You've got to be kidding me. Cars from the mid-60s to early 70s handled so much better than these sluggish boats. Visually, the Gran Torino had its moments, with a signature fastback roofline on sport models, but the larger bumpers introduced for safety standards were a blatant sign of the times. It was like Ford was trying to dress up a pig. The interiors? Don't even get me started on those comically thick door seals that were clearly an attempt to hide poor panel gaps. If you thought the exterior was bad, wait until you feel the cheapness of the dashboard with its standard horizontal speedometer. This car was a tragic reflection of an industry in turmoil. Yet here it is today, increasingly collectible due to its association with the Starsky and Hutch TV show. It's almost ironic that a car with such a dreadful pedigree has become a sought-after piece of nostalgia. But remember, folks, it's only original once. And if you're lucky enough to find one in decent shape, maybe, just maybe, it will have a bit of that brutal charm left in it. What do you think? Can a car this flawed ever be worth your time and money? All right, folks, strap in because we're about to dive into the exterior of the 1973 Ford Gran Torino. And trust me, it's not going to be pretty. First off, let's talk about the colors. Ford offered a palette that seems to scream, "I'm trying too hard." Light blue, medium green metallic, and bright red, these are colors that might have worked back in the day, but now, they just feel like a bad throwback to a time when subtlety was thrown out the window. And don't even get me started on the medium copper metallic. That shade is what I'd call a last resort color, like when you forget to pick up paint and just grab whatever is left in the garage. Now, when you look at the body lines, it's hard not to notice the heavy, boxy shape that doesn't do this car any favors. Sure, the fastback roofline on the sport models tries to add some flair, but honestly, it looks like Ford was trying to stretch a good idea but ended up with a bloated fish instead. The lines are clumsy, and the whole thing just feels like it's lost in the malaise of the early 70s. Moving on to the grille and bumpers, this is where things get even more tragic. The larger, more prominent bumpers introduced to comply with new federal safety standards scream "safety first," but look like they belong on a tank rather than a car. That lattice grille? It's trying to be bold but ends up looking like it was designed by someone who's never actually seen a car before. The split grille design is just awkward, making the front end look like it's wearing a frown. What about the rust spots? You can bet your bottom dollar that if you find a Gran Torino from this era, it's going to have rust like a bad case of the flu. Trunk floors, lower quarter panels, and fenders are common culprits. It's almost like Ford was trying to make sure that you'd have to invest even more money into a car that was already a questionable purchase. And don't even think about the build quality, comically thick door seals to hide poor panel gaps. Seriously? That's about as appealing as a soggy sandwich. So what do you think? Does the exterior make you want to run out and buy one? For me, there's just nothing sexy about it. It's like a bad date that keeps showing up and reminding you of all the things you wish you'd forgotten. If I had to say it, I would definitely steer clear of this one, unless you're into the whole, let's buy something that's just begging for a restoration vibe. But if that's your game, good luck with that. Look at this interior. It's a mixed bag, to say the least, with some features that leave you scratching your head. The dashboard layout screams, you're in a 73 with its standard horizontal speedometer and those auxiliary gauges that feel like they were plucked from a junkyard. There's an option for a full-gauge package with a tachometer, but honestly, who needs a tash when the engine is wheezing out a pathetic 190 horsepower? It's like putting lipstick on a pig. You can dress it up, but it's still a sad spectacle. Now, the steering wheel is another story. You get a standard sports steering wheel, but if you're feeling fancy, there's the optional rim blow design. I mean, a steering wheel that you blow on? Really? It's like they were trying to make driving feel like a party trick. For me, that's a hard pass. Moving on to the seats, the Gran Torino offers bench seats as standard, but if you're in the mood for a bit of sportiness, you can opt for those bucket seats with a full console. I'll tell you, the comfort level is about as hit or miss as a blindfolded dart thrower. You might be cradled in plushness one day, and the next you could find yourself sinking into a vinyl nightmare that feels like it belongs in a cheap motel. The optional air conditioning? Good luck with that. It's about as effective as a paper fan in a heat wave. And then there's the smell. You know that distinct aroma of aging vinyl and stale air? Yeah, that's what you're dealing with. It's like a time capsule you can't escape from. Now, turn your attention to the center console. It's nice enough with a floor-mounted shifter that gives you that old-school muscle car vibe, but you have to wonder if it's just there to distract you from the fact that the Gran Torino is a bit of a mechanical disaster. And let's not forget about the common rust spots, especially in the trunk floor and lower quarter panels. If you're looking at one of these beauties, get ready to inspect it like you're auditioning for a reality show about car restoration. In the end, the interior is a reflection of the Gran Torino itself, a mix of charm and disappointment. Would I buy one based solely on the interior? Not a chance. But if you find one in good condition for a good price, maybe, just maybe, it could be worth a second look. But remember, it's only original once, and that's the harsh reality of classic car ownership. All right, folks, it's time to confront the elephant in the room, the engine, the heart of any car. And when it comes to the 1973 Ford Gran Torino, it's a mixed bag of mediocrity wrapped in nostalgia. The engine options for this car are a veritable buffet of disappointment. Let's break it down, shall we? First up, we have the Windsor V8. This engine, with a displacement of 302 cubic inches, cranks out a pathetic 140 horsepower. I mean, come on, 140 horsepower? In the glorious 70s, when muscle cars were supposed to roar, this engine barely whispers. And don't even get me started on the torque. It's sitting at 239 pound-feet, which is just enough to get you off the line, but good luck trying to impress anyone with that. Now, if you want to step it up a notch, you might think the Cleveland V8 would save the day. And at first glance, it seems so, with horsepower ranging from 162 to a glorified 264, depending on the configuration. But let's keep it real. You're still stuck in the Malaise era, where compression ratios have dropped to a sad 7.6 to 1. So what do you get? Engine overheating on higher compression models, and that's if you're lucky enough for it not to fail under high-stress use. The torque? A respectable 276 to 301 pound-feet, but it's still an uphill battle against the competition. Then there's the modified V8, boasting 400 cubic inches. Sure, it's got a slightly better 170 horsepower, but at this point you're just grasping at straws. Torque rises to 336 pound-feet, which is decent, but the reality is, the Gran Torino is losing its edge in a world that was once ruled by true muscle. The big block V8 option? Well, it varies by trim and compliance to emission standards, meaning you're in for a gamble. You might get something decent, or you could end up with a paperweight. And let's talk about the transmission, shall we? The Ford C4 and C6 are decent, but nothing, absolutely nothing, compares to the Turbo Hydromatic 400. That's the best automatic transmission ever built, hands down. So, if you're considering a Gran Torino, you better hope it's paired with something that can actually deliver on the promise of power. To sum it all up, the engine options in the 1973 Ford Gran Torino are a classic case of what could have been. It's like a once mighty gladiator reduced to a feeble old man. You want power and performance? Keep looking, because this isn't it. Would I buy one? Hell no. But if you're after a piece of history with a brutal charm, you might just overlook these shortcomings. Just remember, it's only original once. What do you think about the transmission options in the 1973 Ford Gran Torino? Spoiler alert, they're about as thrilling as a wet sock. Ford had a chance to put something interesting in this car, but instead, they stuck with the mundane. Now, the Turbo Hydromatic 400, known affectionately as the THM 400, is the best automatic transmission ever built. No questions asked. It's a marvel of engineering, smooth as silk, and it can handle the horsepower like a champ. But what does Ford give us? The Ford C4 and C6, which are decent at best, but don't hold a candle to the THM 400. The C6 is particularly notorious for its weaknesses, especially under stress. Imagine trying to haul a heavy load with a transmission that's already sweating bullets just from a casual drive around the block. For me, that's an immediate disqualifying element. Now let's talk about rear axle ratios. You've got your standard ratios like 2.75 to 1, 3.0 to 1, and 3.25 to 1. They all sound great on paper, but in reality, forget about it. These ratios do nothing to enhance the driving experience. Instead, they contribute to the overall lethargy of the Gran Torino. With a 0 to 60 time of approximately 8.9 to 9.5 seconds, you'd think the rear axle would help you get off the line a bit quicker. But no, it feels like you're trying to launch a battleship. Let's be real here. The handling in this car is a far cry from what we had in the mid-60s to early 70s. Back then, you could feel the road. Now, it's like driving a sofa on wheels. The Gran Torino has lost that edge, and it's all about compromises now. Heavy body, sluggish performance, and a transmission that can't keep up. It's utterly disappointing. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but it's a classic. Sure, it has that historical charm, but if you're going to invest your money, wouldn't you want something that drives as good as it looks? With the Gran Torino, you're getting a piece of automotive history, but you're also getting a hefty dose of mediocrity. If you find one in good condition, at least it'll look good sitting in your driveway while you contemplate your life choices. Just don't expect it to perform like the legends of yesteryear. All right, folks, buckle up because we're diving into the suspension, brakes, and handling of the 1973 Ford Gran Torino. Now, if you think we're going to praise this car's ride quality, you might want to rethink that. The suspension setup is about as thrilling as watching paint dry. Sure, it's a classic, but let's not kid ourselves. It's a product of the Malaise era, where everything was designed with the sole purpose of being bland and uninspiring. The Gran Torino features a front suspension system with coil springs and independent struts. Nothing too groundbreaking there. It's a decent setup for cruising around town, but if you think this car can handle like its predecessors from the mid-60s, you've got another thing coming. Those old girls had a kind of finesse and responsiveness that this big hunk of metal simply lacks. The rear-end sports leaf springs, and while they do the job, they're not exactly known for providing a sporty feel. In fact, if you push this car too hard, it can turn into a wallowy mess. You'll be praying for a miracle as you navigate a corner, and let's be honest, you might just end up wishing you had a different ride altogether. Now, let's talk brakes. Ah, yes. The brakes. My biggest issue has always been the brakes. The Gran Torino comes equipped with power-assisted front disc brakes and rear drums. Sounds good on paper, right? Well, in reality, it's a mixed bag. The stopping power is adequate for everyday driving, but if you're planning on pushing this beast, prepare for a rude awakening. Those rear drums are a throwback to a time when manufacturers thought they could get away with subpar stopping technology. You know what I mean? The kind of brakes that make you wish for a time machine to go back to the days of robust, reliable stopping power. So, how does all this add up? When you're behind the wheel of the Gran Torino, you're not just driving a car, you're experiencing the decline of American automotive engineering. The handling is pretty dreadful compared to its predecessors, and while the ride may feel cushy on a straight road, add some curves and you'll quickly realize this isn't a sports car. You'll be wrestling with the steering wheel just to maintain a semblance of control. In the end, if you're looking for a car that can deliver an exhilarating driving experience, the Gran Torino isn't it. It's a piece of history, yes, but it's also a reminder of how far we've fallen in terms of driving engagement. Would I buy it? Not for the driving experience, that's for sure. When it comes to the reliability of the 1973 Ford Gran Torino, we need to face some harsh truths. Sure, it has that retro appeal and a bit of nostalgia, but let's not kid ourselves. This is not a car you want if you're looking for a dependable daily driver. It suffers from common rust issues, especially in the trunk floor, lower quarter panels, and fenders. These are classic spots where you'll find rot creeping in, and trust me, if you're not prepared to deal with it, you're about to find yourself in a financial hole. The electrical issues aren't any better either. Faulty wiring harnesses in the dashboard can turn your cruising experience into a game of will it start today? Not exactly the kind of reliability you want from a classic. Now, let's talk performance. With a 0 to 60 miles per hour time hovering around 8.9 to 9.5 seconds depending on the engine, this car wasn't exactly a speed demon. 1970 was the last great year for high-compression V8s, and by the time we hit 1973, we're left with a pitiful compression ratio of 7.6 to 1 and a pathetic 190 horsepower from the Windsor V8. It's like Ford threw in the towel and said, let's just make this car look good and hope no one notices the slouching performance. And while I'm at it, let's address the transmission. The Turbo Hydromatic 400 is hailed as the best automatic transmission ever built, and here we are with a Ford C6. Nothing to write home about. It's a shame, really, because the potential for so much more was there, but the execution fell flat. Yes, the Gran Torino has its charm, and it can be an absolute blast to drive when it's in good shape, but that's a big if. So what's the verdict? If you find a Gran Torino in solid condition and the price is right, say for a well-preserved example in the $15,000 to $30,000 range, you might consider pulling the trigger. But remember, it's only original once. If you come across a repainted body or a non-original engine, walk away. For me, that's an immediate no. It's all about the brutal charm and unapologetic character of this car, but it requires a commitment to maintenance and care. Would I spend my money on this? Only if I'm ready for a project that could either bring joy or headache. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give it a like. Leave your comments and impressions. Your opinion is very important to me. Until next time.